Good morning, everyone. My name is Raina Ghazi, and I am the Teacher Development Manager for Macmillan Education International Curriculum. Thank you so much for joining our webinar this morning with Charlotte Rance, who is our literacy author and expert, who will be delivering a really engaging session focusing on enhancing spelling and grammar skills. If you have any questions, feel free to write them in the questions box, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. I will pass it over to Charlotte now. Thank you.
Hello everybody, welcome to our session. Let me just check that you can all hear me okay. So if you can type your location and the time you are currently at into the question box, and I will just check that we're all clear. Oh, lovely. Hello Delhi. Payal is in India as well. Tanya. Excellent. Nepal, Kathmandu, hello. London, 9:30, welcome to my time zone. UAE in there, Uruguay, 5:30 a.m. Catalina, what are you doing up so early? 4:31 a.m. in Barbados, that's an early. Are you going to bed or are you waking up, Trudy? Good, we've got a few people from Bahrain, Kuwait. Nice to see so many people in our webinar this morning. Fabulous. Well, I am here in sunny Brighton on the south coast of the UK, and it is just gone 9:30 with me. So let's get going. Our session this morning is, or this afternoon, or the middle of the night, depending on where you are, is all about enhancing spelling and grammar skills in our classrooms. As you will see, I have not got the camera on. I promise I am here, but we've had a few internet issues, so always best to make sure that the slides are the most visible thing and that you can hear me clearly. Also, my hair is a disaster at the moment because I've been locked in my house for a few months at this point. All right, so enhancing spelling and grammar skills. I'm going to start you off with a little test. I'm going to show you some OO words, words that contain a double OO that make an OO sound. So have a look at the word boxes. Can you guess what the missing words are? If you think you know, you can type your answers into the question box. What could these words be? All of them contain a double O. Book, says Rena. That's a very good guess. Cook, wool. Some excellent ideas coming out. Moon. Nice one. Two. Cool. Wool, moon, moo. Moo is one of my favorite words. Okay. Excellent ideas. Excellent ideas. So let's reveal these answers one by one. Our first word, when it comes up, was pool. Excellent. We've also got zoo. We've got book. We've got room. We've got roof. And our final word should be quite an easy one to guess. Levan has got it. It is spoon. Yep, Farhana got it as well. All right. If I give this task to the children in my classroom, how do they guess? What information do they have to support their learning? How can they identify? What did you do to guess these words? Well, first of all, we've told them that they have all got a double O in them. So we can use that information to fill in many cases, the up to 50% of the word. Already we know that it has a double O. And as Ilham has rightly said, it's the length and the direction of boxes. Indeed, the blocks, they represent the shape of the letter. So does the letter sit above the line? Is it a tall letter? Does it have a tail below? And we are using those deduction skills to identify what we know. This is what we would refer to as a noticing activity. And we'll talk a little bit about noticing activities in a moment. Let's have a look at the shape of our session today. So we're going to start a little bit talking about how children access language. And then we're going to move into 3 sections. The first section is all about noticing skills and noticing activities. Then we're going to move on to more structured activities. And finally, we will be looking at productive use of our new grammar and spelling abilities. So, if you are ready, let's get started. And we're going to start with a quote from a lady called Anna Maria Pinter, Dr. Anna Maria Pinter. She's based at the University of Warwick here in the UK, and she is a language acquisition specialist that focuses on working with young learners. And I'm starting with this quote because it is incredibly important to remember that when we are working with children, their brains are still very much developing. As we all know, for those of you that have children of your own, for those of you that teach young learners, children learn and develop simultaneously. Not like us adults where all of our brain channels are fully formed. The kids are still learning how things work, and they're developing their sense of place in the world. So when it comes to vocabulary, spelling, grammar instruction, it's really important that we're working in a holistic way. Starting with the context, starting with a theme that the children can connect with, rather than trying to encourage, the language analysis that we would do with older learners. Only when the children begin to ask questions about language analysis should we start really directing their attention to those tools that they can use. From the beginning, what we're looking for is rich input, different ways to get them imagining the situation and attaching language, focusing our information on how language is used rather than what the language points are. So what does that mean in the classroom? Well, what you can see here is something called the C wheel, which was developed by a woman called Carol Reed. I'm sure some of you have probably heard of her, especially those of you that are working in multilingual classrooms. Carol Reed has done a lot of work with non-native language learners. And this C wheel is a reference tool for us as teachers to help us identify what ingredients we need to make sure that children are learning effectively. And the first thing that you notice, of course, is that the child is right there at the center. For all of us, I'm sure that we know how important it is to ensure that everything we put together in our lessons needs to be focused around that child. Because the way that children work and the way that children understand, they learn from their own perspective. They need to be central to our lessons, and language needs to be central to their lives. But of course, around that, we have 8 different portions which talk about the 8 perfect conditions for the optimal learning in our classroom. And you'll notice, rather helpfully, that they are all done with the letter C. So some of them are quite obvious. We all know that children are creative and curious, and that these are tools we can use in the classroom to help expand their connection with what they're learning. Of course, we also know that children need to be given all of the care and support that we can to help them to develop, supporting them as individuals, supporting their learning, being positive, etc. A couple that I would like to draw attention to, firstly, is connection. Children need to be able to make connections to their own lives in everything that we teach them. But also, they need to be making connections with other areas of their learning. So, cross-curricular activities that highlight vocabulary from other lessons used in different contexts. Bringing in all of the spelling and vocabulary patterns from different areas of language that they are learning in other lessons, and making those connections across the board and helping them and supporting them to do that. Community is another one that's worth highlighting at this point as well, and community is sort of an overarching heading. Talks about all of the collaboration in the classroom, working cooperatively, working together, and also ensuring that they are able to communicate effectively. The final one that I'd really like to point out at this point is challenge. And the challenge level is an incredibly important perspective that many of us think about a lot, but it's quite difficult, especially in an international context where the children often have differing experiences with English, different contexts at home. Some come from English-speaking families, some come from bilingual families, others don't have access to English at home as much as their classmates. So it's important that we're addressing challenge as well and making sure that we've got an appropriate balance, not just in terms of linguistic content, but also in terms of the way that they are working and the type of cognitive challenge that activities can bring as well. Not making sure it's not too easy, not too difficult, and that there's something for everybody. And essentially what we can say is that if we can access all 8 of these areas in our lessons, then we are addressing the social needs, the psychological needs, the physical needs, and the emotional needs of the children in our classrooms. So, what does that mean for grammar and spelling activities? Let's start with noticing activities. So, a noticing activity is something that's designed to draw a child's attention to a specific area of language, a specific pattern in spelling. And there are thousands of different ways that we can do this. But what we will often find in our lessons is that we start with the context. That might come through a story, it might come through a picture. And there are lots and lots of techniques that we can use to highlight different aspects within our lessons. So this might be something like using analogies or metaphors. It could be relating different parts of speech to different colours. Excuse me. It could be physical manipulatives, standing children in order, highlighting, using mime, movements, gestures with your hands, putting actions to songs, acting things out. It might be using logical deduction activities, as we did at the beginning, where we addressed those word boxes and used our deduction techniques to figure out what the word could be. Which double O words do I know that are 3 letters long? What double O words do I know that have a tall letter at the beginning and the end? Can it be this? And of course, also classification activities that we can use as well. So let's have a look at a few examples of noticing activities that we could use in our classrooms for different aspects. And I'm going to start with grammar. So, answers in the question box. Can you identify my sentence? I'll give you a minute. Can you put the words in the right order? Let's see who's going to be the first one to get that sentence typed in. Oh, hey, there we go. First one in was Sisha. But lots and lots and lots of you are very right. Can you turn on the light? Or can you turn the light on? Also possible, Sana there. Thank you. And I will accept all of those answers. So this activity, it's a pair work activity in my classroom. What you would do is you would figure out how many children you have in your class. Let's say we've got 20 children. It's a nice small class. And I put them into pairs. So what I need is 10 envelopes. And I would put different sentences into each of the 10 envelopes and ask the children in the class to write the numbers 1 to 10 on their piece of paper. And what they do, I hand out one envelope to each pair. They take the cards out of the envelope. They can use those manipulatives. Nice bit of multi-sensory learning going on. Put the words in order, working with their partner. Write the sentence down next to the number. So here, this one's number 5. They would write next to number 5 on their list. Once they've finished, they put the words back into the envelope and pass the envelope to the next pair. And we can use that with lots and lots of different sentence types. The key thing to notice here is that all of our parts of speech are color-coded. So our verbs are green, our punctuation is yellow, our prepositions are orange, our articles are red. And when you're doing an activity like this in the classroom, it's important to remember your color coding and to keep referencing those throughout, because this is another visual guide. So we can talk to the children about the different things that they can change. So in this sentence, they can change that blue word light for another noun, which would also be on a blue card. Can you turn on the radio? Can you turn on the television? Can you turn on the microwave or the kettle if your teacher needs a cup of tea? Not that we're encouraging children to play with hot water, because that's a bad idea. But all about recognizing and noticing the different parts of speech and how those sentences work. So in a classroom context, let's say we're practicing classroom questions, we can have all of those questions that we might use. Can I go to the toilet? Can I clean the board? Can you put your crayons away? We can color code all of those questions, pop them into envelopes, and then we can start to notice the patterns. So we can notice how when we ask a question, whichever question we are asking out of our classroom set, can you, it's always starting with a green. How are you? Again, that's a question word. We'd have those in a separate color. Simple activity that we can use just to highlight those different parts of speech. We can do similar things with spelling activities. So here's an example of a noticing activity for spelling. And this one here, we circle the vowels. We've got a bowl of alphabet soup, all of the letters that we can see in the soup, and all the children have to do is go in and circle any of those letters which are vowels. And again, that's noticing activities. So do we know what our 5 vowels are in English? And can we find them? Shika says they have recently used this in her class. Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. Alphabet soup is great. And if you're feeling really adventurous, you can also use alphabet spaghetti. Great fun. This one is taken from a book called Spelling Rules, which has lots and lots of lovely spelling activities. And you'll notice as this session goes on that some of those spelling activities have lovely illustrations as well. Now, we said at the beginning that we teach language to children holistically. We don't start our lessons by saying, okay, today we're going to practice vowels. We would start with a context, with an idea. But that doesn't mean that we can't start to use that meta language by referring to the vowels in English as vowels. Yeah, it's okay to use terminology as long as we are not leading with the terminology and as long as we are keeping things age appropriate. You don't want to be talking at length about what makes a vowel a vowel. It's enough for the children to know that in English we have 5 vowels. They are A, E, I, O, U, and we can identify their shape. Okay. This can also work in terms of a grammar context. So this is an activity that works really, really well in an online context as well, because all you need is a nice engaging picture. That picture can come from anywhere. It might be a book that you're reading in class, a storybook. It could be your course book, or it could just be a pretty picture that you found on the internet, just like this one. And this is another noticing activity, which I've taken from Grammar Rules, which is the sister book of spelling rules. So a nice pair, lots and lots of grammar activities in there that we can use. And this one is all about noticing different parts of speech. So we start with a picture. That picture represents our context. Our context here is, of course, farm animals. And I've got a nice brightly coloured engaging picture for the kids to look at. The next step, you will have a pile of cards on different colours. You will have different parts of speech. So you can see that the nouns here are on the pink card. Prepositions might be orange, verbs might be green, as they were in our last example. And what happens is you take it in turns to turn over the top card. So in this case, I would say to the children, okay, can you find me 10 nouns in this picture? And the children work, they figure out what's a noun. Noun is a naming word. Okay, so I have to name 10 things that I can see in the picture. And they might come up with chicken, goat, cow, pig, tree, cat, butterfly, anything that they can see in the picture. You can make it easier or more difficult by increasing the number of things that they need to identify, increasing the complexity, increasing the level of challenge. For example, with prepositions, you might ask the children to form a simple sentence with prepositions. So whichever language of place that we are using, the baby horse is in front of his mum, the apples are on the tree, the sun is in the sky. We can use it with verbs. So the sheep is jumping, the flower is growing, the sun is shining. Practicing our verbs in a sentence format, and that brings in not only the terminology that we are looking at, but also giving examples of repeated structures that the children can use to talk about what they see. This next activity is another noticing activity, and this one is a lovely one for spelling. So, as the teacher in the classroom, I would say, I am thinking of a secret letter. So in my head, I think of one letter from the alphabet. And I'll say to the children, okay, you can ask me questions to guess what the letter is that I am thinking about. But of course, remember, we need to put this in a context. So my context here, I'm going on a picnic. What shall I put in my picnic basket? And the children can say, do you like apples? And I would say either yes or no. And in this case, I'm going to say, yes, I do. So at this point, the children know that the letter I am thinking of is in the word apples. So it's either an A, a P, an L, an E, or an S. And again, using our deductive powers, we ask more questions. Do you like biscuits? No, I don't. So it cannot be the S from apples, can it? And it's definitely not any of those other letters. And they would, okay, all right. Do you like bananas? And I would say, yes, I do. Children can then start to work out. Does anybody know what the letter is that I am thinking of? You can see it in apples, you can see it in bananas, but you cannot see it in biscuits. Absolutely, Abha and Drashti have got it straight away. It must be the letter A. So again, here we are using that deductive process, giving the children the opportunity to work out for themselves the similarities between words. And you can do this in so many different ways. So maybe, it's my birthday. What are you going to buy me as a present? I'm going to buy you some chocolate. I don't like chocolate. I'm going to buy you some strawberries. Ooh, lovely. If you're practicing words with double letters. There's lots of different ways that we can manipulate this. But what we can also say about this activity is that it is good for practicing specific language patterns as well. So it's a good introduction to some structured grammar practice. Here we're practicing do you like questions, and the children can see very clearly that the end of the sentence is the bit that changes, whereas the do you like is staying the same every time. And that can be a bit of concrete practice for them as well, a little bit of structured support. But back to our old friend Carol Reed, who makes a very important point by saying that noticing activities by themselves do not, by any means, ensure that children can automatically apply whatever they apply. So when we are thinking about introducing spelling patterns, introducing parts of speech, introducing different grammar forms, whether that be the passive voice or learning how to use articles and when we use the and when we don't, it's not enough just to have noticing activities. Structured practice is a key element of learning, especially with young learners who need that repetition constantly to keep them going. So let's have a look at a few structuring activities. And what you'll notice as we progress through these is that the scaffolding that is provided for the children gets increasingly less throughout the activities. But we'll start with a nice, very structured spelling activity here. And what they are practicing is the magic E, as we call it in first language classrooms. If you're a phonics teacher, split digraphs. But yeah, for me, it will always be the magic E. So what the children are doing, they have a sentence with two possible options. They have to read the sentence and decide which one is correct. So I saw a lion the zoo at or ate. Is it hat or hate? Is it mat or mate? And the children can go through. They have the time to read the sentence, to look at the contextual clues. That is a lovely picture of a rainy day at school. I absolutely love that illustration. And they can read that through. It's a very supported activity where they simply choose and colour the correct word. Another type of structured activity which is very supported is our little sentence machine. So this is great for structured grammar practice. And what we've got is a base sentence. You'll notice that in some of the boxes we have multiple words that we could choose from. So I would give an example as the teacher at the beginning of the class. I choose one of the students in my class. I'm going to choose the lovely Rainer. I say Rainer, and we move on to the next part, has I can choose from the next box. So is her hair long, short, nice, or beautiful? And she has beautiful long. And the next one, I choose the color. So I can say dark. And then we move into our little red box at the top, which has got our anchor points, hair, and, so these two will never change, brown eyes. Lovely. So yeah, Raina has beautiful dark hair and hazel eyes. And the children can then start to play with the machines. So they can choose 5 people in their classroom, they can choose people in their families, and they can make those sentences in a nice structured way. There are parts that they can change and parts that they cannot to keep the sentence correct. Yes, there are lovely sentences that can be created, and you can use this to practice any form of sentence types. Priyanka's a big fan of this one. Yeah, takes a minute to draw them up, but you can use it with almost anything. So, you know, again, if we come back to our classroom questions, we'd start with can, I, and then they can move on. So in our verbs, we might have go, play, ask, talk, colour, any sort of verb that they would use in the classroom. So can I, an option box, and then they can choose a preposition, you know, to, in, with, and then in the noun box, they might choose something else at the end with the object at the end of the sentence. So can I go to the toilet? Can I play with my friend? Can I talk to my teacher? Etc. But giving them that concrete template to work in. Because remember, from our C wheel, we need to make sure that they are feeling cared for, that they are getting the support that they need, but that the level of challenge is right. Hala thinks this is a very cute activity. I think it's very cute too. I nicked that from a book called Activities for the Primary Classroom, 500 Activities for a Primary Classroom from Macmillan. It's got lots of lovely activities in there, but this one is one of my favourites that I've been using for years. It is a great fun way of practicing that structure. Another great way of bringing structured spelling activity. Oh, Sylvia says you have the book, and it's fantastic. Great recommendation there from Sylvia. I'm sure you use it a lot. Those ones are always a nice reference point for us as teachers when we have, oh my goodness, I need to fill 5 minutes of time today. What activity can I use? Yeah, it's a good one. So, in terms of structured practice for spelling, I do love a puzzle. You will see up here that we have got a nice crossword. This one is taken from Spelling Rules 6. So top end of primary, challenging vocabulary and challenging questions for them there. But crosswords are fantastic for spelling practice. It really encourages children to think about, you know, putting the letter in the correct place of the word. I also really enjoy, my computer's gone to sleep, activities like this next one, which again, it's all about synonyms and practicing spellings of synonyms, but also the OUS suffix. So here the children have to think of an OUS word that has the same meaning. So jealous becomes envious, funny, hilarious, etc. They can work through those. So again, this is a top end activity, harder vocabulary there, but you can do the same thing with ED verbs down at the beginning end of learning. So stacking the words up, and they can see that that OUS is a repeated pattern and they are all describing words. So as I say, both of these spelling activities are from Spelling Rules, but if you do like a puzzle, there are plenty of easy ways that you can create your own. I am a huge fan of Puzzle Maker from Discovery Education. I've put the link on the slide, and you will get these slides through after the webinar, so do feel free. With Puzzle Maker, you can make all sorts of different puzzles, completely free, easy to use. You can use any of the vocabulary that you are covering in the class, and they're a really nice, engaging, fun activity. So I'm going to give you an example. I made this one for you, and this is a code word. So every letter is represented by a different number. I have given you some of the information, and you need to deduce what our missing words are. If anybody can untangle my sentence, I'll give you a moment to try. But we can see already that the number 9 is you. Oh, Sylvia has almost got it. Astra has got it spot on. You are a super teacher. There we go. Okay, so they can use that, and you can make that nice and straightforward and easy, and you don't have to do any of the work. You literally just program it into the Puzzle Maker, and the Puzzle Maker does everything. And that it's an education site, so it's all free, printable, downloadable. Create your own puzzles for people to use in your classroom. Okay, there we go. Yes, everybody's managed to work it out, and I feel like I'm getting 1,000 compliments. Very nice indeed. Okay, so remembering as we're going through that our structured practice starts off with lots and lots of concrete support for the children, and we need to gradually build them up to independent production, taking away some of those supports, giving them more independence. But of course, for all of us literacy teachers, what we really want to see is the end goal. What we really want is our children to be using that language productively. So how can we get our children, our primary age students, using the language? And before we move into some activities, there are 4 key things that I want us to address. So first of all is to make sure that we are setting clear boundaries for the tasks. And that's not just about the type of language we want them to use and the type of thing that we want them to create, the type of output that we want. In a primary classroom, it's also about how they're going to do it. You know, are they taking turns? Are they listening actively? Are we teaching them these skills? What is the expectation that we want to see as teachers? We also need to be thinking about how we can make it personal. Remember, in that C wheel, the child is at the center. And in child development, this is also true. Children learn by how things relate to them and their own lives. They don't have the same ability to think in abstracts or empathize as adult and older learners do. With our very young learners, it all has to be about them and their lives. How does that connect to my house? How does that connect to my family? How do I bring it back to what I understand? So making sure that any productive activities we're doing are as personal as they can be. We also need to ensure that we are setting our classes up for success. So we've set the boundaries, we know what we want them to do and how we want them to do it. But how do we make sure that they are successful? Have we done enough noticing? Have we done enough structured practice of this language that they feel confident? Have we made the task achievable? Yeah, it's It's always funny to think that 1 minute seems like a really short time, but if you have to talk for 1 minute, 1 minute can be very difficult to achieve. So are we making sure that they are ready for success? Have we taught them everything they need to be successful? And success is key because success builds confidence. If I can do this thing, then I can try a little better and a little harder next time, and I can do the next step next time. When we achieve successfully, we build our confidence, and we are then more capable to try and experiment later. Final thing to remember in terms of using the language is allowing time for preparation and practice. It is much easier to be successful if you've had the opportunity to make the mistakes ahead. So when it comes to productive activities, the best idea is to give the children warning, give them an opportunity. So at the end of your lesson, say, okay, tomorrow I want Rena, Sylvia, and Lovely to do a presentation for me. So you've got all night to get ready, all night to practice, all night to prepare, and tomorrow I will listen to what you have to say. So let's have a look at a few little productive activities that we can use. And I will start with one of Sylvia has agreed to do this. Okay, Sylvia, I look forward to your presentation. Using the language going forward. So one thing that I really like to do with my classes is build stories, create our own stories. And this activity is a collaborative activity. We can do it by writing, or we can do it orally as well. So it depends on whether your focus is on oral language production or whether you're specifically looking at spelling. But we can use this to create some amazing stories. Step one is to hand out flashcards to all of the children in your class. They don't have to be connected flashcards, but they do have to be familiar flashcards. So they should be easy to identify. Flashcards that you have used in class before, that you know the children know about, vocabulary they know. And then we need to make sure that we are checking that vocabulary. So do we remember what this word is? Do we remember how we spell this word, etc.? And then we build a story. So starting with the teacher, I will start with once upon a time, and maybe I have a flashcard with a picture of a cat on it. So I would say, once upon a time, there was a little black cat. And then I pass the story to the next student. Maybe the next student has a flashcard with a picture of a table on it. And so student 2 has to continue the story using the word from their flashcard. So I start the story. Once upon a time, there was a little black cat. Student 2 said, the cat was under the table eating some cream. And then the next child will take their flashcard and somehow have to bring that item into the story. In an online context, you can do this with real life objects that the children have found. So, bring your favorite toy to the classroom tomorrow and let's make a story out of all of these toys. Doesn't have to be flashcards, can be real things. And as Priyanka says, yes, this will also help with creative writing. So if you do want to focus on spelling of keywords, make sure that you are handing out flashcards that relate to specific things. If you're practicing using OUS ending adjectives, then you can give the rule that they have to add one adjective that ends with OUS every time. Lots of different ways that we can manipulate that to make those effective. Often, when it comes to productive language, it's nice to bring in a little bit of drama, especially with young learners' age group. Of course, when we think of drama, the first thing we think of is role plays. And, well, in child development, role plays are how children learn. You know, I'm sure that many of us all put on our mother's shoes when we were little and ran around the house. And that is role playing. It's a natural learning tool for children. So using role play in the classroom gives them an opportunity to practice the language in a fun way. We can also encourage them to use puppets, and puppets, having conversations with puppets, acting things out with your puppets, or in our online context at the moment, again, the cuddly toys from your bedroom. Let's make a puppet classroom, so you as the teacher can bring in one of your puppets or your toys from your childhood. I don't know if you still have them all, but encourage the children to bring their favorite soft toy to the classroom, and you can make up little acting skits and activities with the puppets, modeling conversations between them, or using them just to answer anyway. And then, of course, stories that we've been reading in the classroom that we know well, retelling stories. It's an incredibly important learning skill. It offers opportunities to review and revise the language for the children. For us as teachers, it allows us to check comprehension, but it also practices skills of sequencing, and it gives lots of opportunities for productive oral language in the classroom, where they can practice their different grammatical structures at the same time. So drama, a lovely, lovely way of getting some production into our classroom. But of course, we want our language production to be personal. And for me, as a young learners teacher, the best time for that is with our circle time at the beginning of our lessons, at the end of our lessons, working together as a group, not on a specific task, but in a more personal way. And a couple of the nicest things that we can do to really get the children to engage personally. First of all, show and tell. Show and tell can be quite limited in a classroom environment. In an online classroom, it's boundless. If we're doing show and tell in class, then basically the kids are limited to the things that they can bring in. When they are in their own homes on a video camera, they can show us some amazing things. So show and tell might be, you know, bring your pet to class. It could be bring your brother or sister to class. It could be bring your mum or your grandmum to class. Talking about something, and again, giving the children good warning. So letting them know that, you know, choosing 2 or 3 students to do show and tell every day, rather than getting all of the students to do show and tell in one day. Just taking 5-10 minutes and say, okay, so tomorrow, Vartika and Jency, you will be doing show and tell, so you can choose one important thing, or bring something that you got for your birthday, or bring a photograph to class and talk about it. And giving them the opportunity. So this little kid here is talking about his umbrella and how he uses that. But it could be anything, as long as we give them the time to prepare. And then circle time more widely, and just giving children an opportunity to talk personally, where we as teachers are not entirely focused on their accuracy and their level of production. Excuse me. So in terms of sort of these show and tell and circle time activities, when it comes to correction, if they do make mistakes, remember to frame things positively. We want to see success. And making mistakes, as we all know, is part of language development. So a common problem that you'll find with native English-speaking children is that when they learn language receptively, they learn it correctly, but once they start going to school, they start to make new mistakes. So from the ages of 1 to 4, they will be accurately using irregular past tense verbs in English because that's what they hear from their parents. So yesterday we went to grandma's, yesterday we went to the beach. They've received this information and they've applied it. They go to school, they have a lesson with their teacher, we talk about the past and we talk about ed spelling endings, and suddenly we say wented instead of went because children begin to over apply the rules. So if we are having these discussions and the children do make a mistake, so it's like, okay, how are you today? What did you do yesterday? Yesterday I went to my grandmother's. Oh, you went to your grandmother's, and just reinforce with a correct model. Don't highlight the mistake. We don't say it's not went, it's not wented, it's went. Just correct and move on. Engage with what they are saying. Anamika has asked, how can we include circle time to our online classes? Anamika, what I would suggest, number one, is open the classroom, if you can, 5 minutes before class starts, and just take that time at the beginning to say hello to the children one by one as they come in and ask them a personal question. Give them a chance, we would say mics off 90% of the time for talking, but in circle time, let them have the microphone on so they can say hello, hi to their friends across things, and just sort of have a bit of time at the beginning for personal discussion, and again at the end of the classroom just have 5 minutes where you're saying goodbye. Use the time to use the routines that you would in the classroom. So if you do the same thing every single day, what's the day? Maybe you have songs, all of the things that you would traditionally do in your classroom, all of those routines, try to build time into the lesson. Simranjeet says, yeah, you usually do that. I think that's great. Just they need that opportunity to be able to interact. And if we think teaching online is weird, no doubt the kids are really confused by it a lot of the time. So yeah, do try and build those moments in. And with activities like show and tell, make sure that the children are clear. They know that everyone will get a turn, but not everyone has a turn on the same day, and make sure that they're clear about those. So we are pretty much at the end of the session. We've started to get some questions through. Now is the opportunity for you to type your questions into the question box. I will try and answer as many as we can. And I'm going to start with Anil's question. So how can we interact with students who aren't interested in any of the activities, or students who are shy around their parents? Shyness and disinterest are a common challenge, and again and again and again it comes back to that personalization. In terms of the interest, you will never have everybody interested in the same thing at the same time. Many years in the classroom teaches every teacher that. But what we can do is make sure that we are trying to make things as engaging as we possibly can, and making things as personal as we possibly can. So when you ask a question, rather than asking the question generally and asking the children to put their hands up, direct questions and follow-up questions to specific children. So instead of saying, does anybody like, who has a cat or who has a pet? We would say, okay, Rani, do you have a pet? What pet do you have? addressing them personally. In terms of parents who are shy, children who are shy around their parents, maybe if you're noticing a real difference between how much the child participates in a physical classroom versus how much the child is participating online, it might be worth trying to arrange a chat or an email with those parents directly and just say, you know, is it possible that while we're in class time, you stay in a nearby room rather than in the same room as the child? Depending on your relationship with the parents as well. But I mean, shyness is always going to be a thing. And I think that as long as you are open with the parents and, you know, polite about it, then quite often they will understand. They might not always like it, but yeah. Okay. Oh, how can we have circle time with 44 students online? Again, Rajmani, as much as possible, if you can open your classroom before you start the actual lesson, just for a bit of discussion time. It is tricky, but just embedding as much of your typical routine as possible is the best way to do it. So, you know, make sure that when you're doing songs, do the actions, and encourage the children to put whichever online platform you're using in the gallery view so they can see each other and they can see each other doing the actions for the songs that you use, etc. In the classroom, but carefully. Okay. A couple of people that are asking questions about dyslexia. I'm going to say that, number one, I am not a dyslexia specialist. I've had a few children in classes over the years which have dyslexia and other special educational needs. I think that the best thing to do is to provide extra guidance and support and as much practice as possible. There are certain fonts that you can use that are better when you're making flashcards or making letter cards. And I mean, in terms of resources, we are very, very lucky as language teachers now that, you know, there is a lot of support out there. So what I would say is, first of all, if you do have dyslexic students in your class, make sure that you talk to, you know, supervisors and the school and follow whatever your specific institution has in place. But then also go out there and have a look online. There are dedicated courses for supporting learners with dyslexia out there that are really, really useful, but I am not a specialist, so I'm not going to give you a concrete answer to that, but I would encourage you are challenged by this at the moment to go and do a bit of research and find out what works for you. Any more questions? Memorizing correct spelling is another difficulty for kids, absolutely, and wherever possible, Jency, I would say that, you know, work on patterns, work on commonalities rather than just learning by rote, encouraging them to notice the patterns. So, for example, we saw the example with the OUS endings of words, you know, seeing those patterns, understanding that, and working through those commonalities rather than memorizing is always the best idea. Okay, so some of the questions coming through now are on wider topics that are potentially best left for other webinars at other times. And we are pretty much out of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to Raina, and she's going to give you a bit of information about where you can access previous webinars on some of the topics that you're asking about and also what's coming forward. Thank you very, very much for your time this morning. Raina, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Charlotte, for another lovely and engaging session. Charlotte's delivering the same session 3 times in the day. So just for your sort of information, if you are joining at really early times, then just be aware that we do have the webinar running later in the day as well. Sometimes it might just be that your routine allows you to be up super early in the morning, which I praise you for, because I don't think I could be up at 4:30 in the morning for a webinar, so that's dedication for you. But just for your sort of information, they are running 3 times in the day. In terms of previous webinar recordings, they are available on our YouTube channel. Information is provided here. Also, upcoming webinars are available on our website. Charlotte will be delivering further sessions in June as well, so do look out for those as well. We do have a home learning content page with resources for primary literacy, maths and science resources. If you do have any questions, do email us and follow us on social media as well. CPD certificates and the PowerPoint slide will be provided via email within 2 weeks, hopefully. So please do look out for those as well. So in the meantime, thank you so much again to Charlotte for a really lovely session. Thank you so much to the attendees as well. And we look forward to having you join a session hopefully in the coming weeks.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care. Bye.